With Tenet out in theaters, we now have 11 Christopher Nolan films to scratch our heads over. So let's rank them from worst to best. Hey everybody, quick thanks for stopping by my channel. If you guys love movies just like I do, you guys are in the right spot. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and click that bell notification for more up and coming video. Tenet marks Christopher Nolan's 11th film. He started back in 1998 with a very short film shot on black and white for Following, and then made a bunch of big films. People regard Christopher Nolan as one of the best directors. His films feel like a huge event every time I go see one at the theater, and so I was really excited for Tenet. So make sure to leave your list down below. How would you rank all 11 Christopher Nolan films, including Tenet? And if you have not seen Tenet, leave your ranking down below and then go back and edit it when you have seen Tenet, and I'd like to see where you place it in there. So coming in at number 11 is Following. This film is 70 minutes long and is shot in black and white and features a young writer as he gets caught in the criminal underground world. He starts to follow people, as the title suggests. It shows the early styles of Christopher Nolan's film techniques. It has a twist in it, much like other Nolan films, but always remains interesting. It's shot well with equipment that doesn't come close to movies like Inception, but I've always been impressed with the acting and the way that Christopher Nolan is able to tell the story in such a short way, but also having use of the budget to make the film really engaging. Coming in at number 10 is Insomnia. Insomnia hardly feels like a Christopher Nolan film. The tone of the movie, the way that it looks, the story, it feels out of place when looking at his catalog of films. It's one of the movies that I often forget about when I think of Christopher Nolan films. But that doesn't mean that it is a bad film. Just because it doesn't feel like a Christopher Nolan film doesn't mean that it is terrible. Robin Williams and Al Pacino give really, really good performance in here, and the atmosphere is crafted so well. It always feels intense, and it's a story that is gripping. You're always on the edge of your seat wanting more. But in terms of the Christopher Nolan films, like I said, it lacks that style that Christopher Nolan has. And at times the film does feel a bit forgettable. Coming in at number 9 is The Dark Knight Rises. Even though The Dark Knight Rises is the weakest of the Dark Knight trilogy, it's still an epic film. I love what they did with Bane starring Tom Hardy, even though you could hardly hear what he said. Anne Hathaway is really good as Catwoman. Unfortunately, Gotham doesn't really feel like Gotham in this movie. What they did with The Dark Knight and Batman Begins, they had a really grimy look at Gotham, but unfortunately it just feels like an average city in this movie. The movie tries to do a lot with its storyline. Unfortunately, there are certain story arcs that never tie in together and feel very weak at times, and they're not really developed. The pacing moves fairly fast for Bruce Wayne, and moments never fully seem to wrap up. The action is so well directed, and Christopher Bell gives another great performance. I also love what they did with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, really teasing you at the end. I still think it's a great comic book movie, but easily the weakest of the trilogy. Coming in at number 8 is Dunkirk. Dunkirk is a unique war film with how the story is structured, being told from 3 perspectives, from the land, air, and sea. It gives an edge over other classic war films. Nolan makes every action scene in here intense, with the sound mixing, the directing, the characters, the way that he moves the camera towards them. It feels very intense and very unique. There is little to no dialogue for certain scenes, which gives the film a realistic touch. There are plenty of darker moments that capture the intensity of war, such as a young British who watches a fellow soldier walk into the ocean. So those moments are very bleak and offer, the more realistic approach to the film and how people felt about war and what had happened. Harry Styles and Tom Hardy are in the film. They don't have a big role in the film, but they do add a lot to the movie. It's one of the better directed Christopher Nolan films. It's very short too compared to the other movies. Coming in at number 7 is The Prestige. The movie starring Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale trying to one-up each other as magicians in the 19th century had a solid twist that gives the film a huge, shocking ending. David Bowie's cameo in here is amazing. The story is told so well with many elements that build off of each other. There's a lot of good development going for these characters, and you definitely feel that rival within the movie. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale give really good performances, and you can tell that they're always trying to one-up each other. It makes the film really interesting to watch. The film is shot beautifully and is one of the few movies of his that was shot with less than $100 million. It has a gripping story, it's always interesting, and the characters in here are a lot of fun. Coming in at number 6 is Interstellar. This is the only Christopher Nolan film that has made me cry, and that's all due to Matthew McConaughey's heartbreaking performance as he's watching his kids grow up in front of him on a screen, and they are growing up faster than he is because of where he is in space. As his crew is trying to find a new planet to live on, his family is growing on Earth, and it leads to a very emotional ending of the movie. The movie is huge, it's grand, tidal waves as tall as buildings on certain parts in space. It is very epic to watch and very visually stunning. Coming in at number 5 is Tenet. Tenet is confusing, but it is highly entertaining. John David Washington does give a bit of a dry performance. Robert Pattinson is really good in the film. This film is ambitious, it is large, he destroys the whole plane in the movie. The film has a terrible pace in the beginning, but once it finds its footing, it starts to become clear what is going on and slows down and allows for the characters and this time inversion to really take over and make the film really interesting. It's big, it's loud, and many story arcs you really have to pay attention to fully understand what time inversion is. It's a clever movie that will improve with every viewing, and I just need to watch it with subtitles because there's many times I could not hear what people say. It's like I'm hearing Bane all over again, so subtitles would be greatly appreciated. Coming in at number 4 is Batman Begins. For the longest time, I never fully cared about Batman Begins. I always preferred The Dark Knight, and I still do. But Batman Begins now, just watching it a couple weeks ago for the first time in years, I understand why people regard it as really good film. I find a lot of the development for Bruce Wayne to be really interesting and really slowed down to make him feel like a human and realistic. He's relatable as well. A lot of great action in here early on when he's just fully understanding his abilities as Batman. I love what they did with Scarecrow. He's not explored a lot compared to like the Joker and Harley Quinn in Batman films. So it's nice to see something different compared to like Penguin and Mr. Freeze and Two-Face. So it's cool to see him, and Ra's al Ghul in the movie was interesting as well. I love what they did with Gotham, making it a grimy place. You could feel that like bad people are just running around, and it gives that sense of urgency for Bruce Wayne to become Batman and clean up the city. And you do see that progression of it cleaning throughout The Dark Knight. And so Batman Begins is really interesting. It's a really good comic book movie, and it set a tone for a comic book movie that we didn't really see before with Spider-Man and X-Men. They felt very comic booky, even though they were good, but Batman Begins felt darker compared to films like X-Men and Blade and Superman movies down the road. So the Batman Begins movie definitely set a different style of comic book movies, which we do get now. Coming in at number 3 is Memento. Memento is like Tenet. It's hard to follow at times, but it's so rewarding in its storytelling. It's packed with twists and reveals that even after repeated views still manages to surprise me. Guy Pearce is trying to piece together his wife's murder, but he suffers from short-term memory loss, which makes it difficult for him to track down the murderer. So he has these tattoos that are able to help him piece together his wife's murder. Even though it's hard to follow at times and it's not told in a linear way, the film never feels corny with the way that a story is told, but instead feels like it's an original film, which makes it thrilling. Coming at number 2 is Inception. A lot of people regard Inception as number 1, and I would fully understand that. No arguing with that. Inception is a unique film that really builds off of each other and really builds on each scene, and as the film progresses and they're explaining Inception, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The dream the dream inside a dream inside a dream. As they were having more and more dreams, it got crazier and crazier and crazier. You have to pay attention to this scene because this scene affects this scene, and then this scene affects this scene. And it's just crazy the way that it is told and the way that it is structured. Probably one of the most clever films to date, and Leonardo DiCaprio is amazing in the film. That hallway scene that they turn the camera and the hallway, it's one of the best action scenes there are. Inception is a movie that is highly engaging. You have to pay attention to every scene, but it's a film that you want to know everything about the story and the characters, and you have to pay attention to every scene. It's like Tenet at times. Tenet is way more confusing than Inception is, but Inception, what they do with the visuals and the cities like turning upside down, it's crazy. It's like a visual feast for moviegoers, filled with a story that is interesting. But coming at number 1 is The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is regarded as like the best comic book movie, and I fully agree. I'm not going to sit here for like 20 minutes and give you a whole new review on The Dark Knight because, let's be honest, The Dark Knight is talked about for many, many years, and there's just the same thing is said over and over again. Heath Ledger gives an amazing, groundbreaking performance as the Joker, something that I don't think will ever be like the same. I don't think anybody will ever be able to recapture what he did in that film. He's easily the best comic book movie, and he has so much to do in this movie, and he makes the character just something you want to know more about, and you're like just at the edge of your seat, just soaking in everything that Heath Ledger is doing. The performance is amazing. The story is gripping. Two-Face in here with Harvey Dent, that's some of the best that they've done with that character. But the action scenes are epic with his bat motorcycle. It's so cool. And the pencil scene with the Joker. There's so many memorable moments in here. The opening sequence is the best for any comic book movie. The Dark Knight is just outstanding. It's one of the best, if not the best, comic book movie. It's filmed so well. It's gripping. It's got that sense of urgency. It's not that kind of villain where his abilities match the Batman, so it challenges him like Bane did. They both were very strong, and so Bane felt like a very different villain than the Joker. The Joker challenged Bruce Wayne mentally and physically, and there's a lot at stake within this movie. So it's a different approach to a villain. A lot of villains are like big and tough, and they have those big action scenes. That's not what Joker is, and I really love that about the Joker. And Heath Ledger, Christopher Nolan as well, really did a lot with the Joker and made for one of the best performances ever. So there you guys have it. All 11 Christopher Nolan films ranked worst to best. I know it'll probably be another couple years before we get another Christopher Nolan film. I'd love to see him do a James Bond movie at some point. That'd be really cool. But he's a great director. Not my favorite director of all time, but his films are highly engaging and really clever. He puts you in the movie. The visuals are stunning. He puts a lot of effort into the plot, the characters, the setting, the climax, all of it. It's very rewarding, and you could tell the effort going into every single scene. So I love his films. None of his movies are terrible by any means. Even Following and Insomnia at the bottom are still really good films. So I'm looking forward to what he does next. Make sure to leave your list down below. How would you rank all 11 Christopher Nolan films from worst to best? I would love to see your list. And stay tuned for more up and coming videos. My name is Justin Watches Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.